Hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy, 4 Nerds by Nerds, hanging out with.
Nerdarchy Ted.
And today we are going to delve into encounter building. To start this video by thanking our sponsor, Nord Games. Down in the description below, you can find a link to Nord Games. Click that link, you'll get a 10% off to anything in their shop. There's also a promo code there as well.
Games by gamers for gamers.
Go get your Nord Games.
All right, so today we're going to talk about encounter building, the different types of monsters or different way that you can present encounters, and how you should wind up using them when you're planning your RPGs.
So, how do you start when you're writing your material, or coming up with encounters? Like back, if you guys follow along, you know we really don't do this anymore, but we used to really.
So the first thing you have to look at is what type of encounter are you looking at? Not only from a power level perspective, but in what are you trying to present? I look at it, there's 3 different types of encounters that you can put out there. So you've got a solo monster. Solo monsters are going to hit hard, be able to, possibly drop a player or two if they're, kind of on power level or beyond for what the party is doing, but they're going to have significantly less attacks than a group of creatures. So that's going to present differently than just a group. So if you're presenting a group of monsters, they're all going to have different tactics. You're going to have weak monsters. You're going to have a leader. You might have a spellcaster or 2 within it. And you're going to have far different tactics involved in that. The other thing that you get into, it doesn't matter whether it's you're fighting in a lair of many creatures and they're coming from farther away, or you're fighting at a portal and new monsters just keep coming out. When you have things that can occur in waves, you also have a different type of encounter because fresh monsters are constantly entering into the fray. So each one presents in a different light, different feel.
Right. With your waves, almost like each wave is almost like a new encounter. And in the way it taxes your players. So yeah, these are all things to take into consideration. When I actually, one of the very few things I do oftentimes when it comes to encounter prep, even to this day, is for 5th edition, I will go to the XP budget and I will figure out what my XP budget is for the monsters per encounter, for an easy encounter to a deadly encounter. And I have like each block, so it gives me this range, and I know roughly, according to Wizards of the Coast, where I'm supposed to be according to that range. Then I take that, ball it up, and throw it out, and then do whatever I want. Now, I look at that, and then I eyeball it, and I go, well, you know what? This says this is a deadly encounter, but like, I know my mage has fireball, and he's probably going to wipe out all these monsters pretty easy. So like, I do this eyeballing thing. If I have a big bad and I want the party, and I want it to stick around for a little while, I will throw a bunch of incredibly weak monsters in there, just so my players have something to split their attention. And, they get to feel cool and be really massive against these really weak foes, and it drains a little bit of the resources. They're not in really any extra danger from these monsters, but because most of the time they really need really high numbers even to hit them, and if they do, they don't do a lot of damage. Really, it's almost like set dressing more so the monsters. But if you go by like the XP budget and stuff in the DMG, that really ratchets up the encounter, even though they're not really a significant part of it. So as a GM, I just kind of have to eyeball it, and that's what I'm doing solo monsters. Because when you do a solo monster, the problem is always going to be economy of actions, right? Your players, they get all their actions, and your monster then gets his action, right? Now, 5th edition is a little bit better because legendary actions and legendary resistances, so it does make your boss monsters a little bit tougher, but even still, they get tramped on.
And don't forget lair actions.
And lair actions. But, all that stuff, it still doesn't seem to quite add up. Plus, you're pulling from one pool of hit points too.
Right.
So if your players have a really good round, they could decimate your big bad, and the fight's kind of over. So that's like some things to think about when you're doing the solo monster, the big boss monster. Groups actually work better. Having a leader monster that's a little bit tougher than the rest, and then having a bunch of other minion type monsters that thematically fit with that leader. That is usually going to be your most useful kind of encounter, your most diverse encounter, your most interesting encounter.
And once you've seen what your party, your players really have the ability to take and dish out, you can do an encounter where everything is elite. It's not quite a boss monster. It's not, able to just rock straight through any particular player. But the encounter that I ran on Saturday night, you guys were a little worried at one point in time when it's like, all right, they're hitting pretty hard and they're not going down. But, the one creature you nearly knocked out in one go with your crit. So like that definitely can change battles, when a crit happens on either side of the case.
No, absolutely. There are just things that are going to happen in a D&D game or any tabletop role-playing game, really, that you as the GM and the players just didn't expect. Sometimes it's just like a lucky die roll, like you said, can completely change everything.
And when it comes to waves, it takes a little bit more setup. It literally takes a dressing on the set of why there's a way for more monsters to enter the fray after battle has already started. You can't be like, oh, these materialize out of nowhere for no reason whatsoever.
Or can you?
Well, you can if you have it, prepared. Oh, they were hidden. They were waiting for this. They were summoned. However you want to do it, but it takes time. The great thing that I think, the thing that I like best about doing waves is there's literally as many waves as you want there to be. So you can present however hard you want the encounter to be, at a moment's notice. It's like, okay, well, that was the last of it. Or nope, there's another one, and you can gauge that when it comes to that set round or that marker in the initiative to say, oh, it's now my turn. Do I want to bring in more? Oh, okay, the party is still itching to fight. They've got plenty of hit points. Oh, no, here's the next waves. So you can keep the battle going as long as everybody is having fun, and you want that challenge to continue.
The other way you might use waves too is if there's an objective outside of just winning the fight, right? Like until they do the thing that they're there for, whether it's disrupt a ritual, whether it's finish a ritual, whether it's destroy an item, whether it's getting an object across the battlefield to this location. Like waves is another good way of saying, well, this is something that's going to keep happening until this requirement has been met.
And having that as an objective, it gives the players the power to honestly push through and fight as hard as possible to make that happen, or just keep clawing through monsters because some players, they just like fighting.
So I feel like waves is kind of like fairly easy once you kind of get a concept of where your players are and what they can handle. And I feel like the easiest is actually like the mixed monster group. That one is the easiest to challenge your players with. Maybe that might be too easy to challenge your players with that one. Of all of them, that could be like the most dangerous one. Because that one you kind of have to get right. Because if they're too strong, they could overcome your party. If they're too weak, they're not going to challenge your party. If you're worried about those things. And then the other thing is the boss monster. The boss fight is always the hardest one to get right if you're just using one monster.
Yeah, one monster is always a challenge because while you can crit and possibly drop one player, you're talking about one monster versus 4, 5, 6, 7, however many. Their likelihood of getting a crit is higher than yours, and as I said, it's possible that crit utterly destroys the battle. Or what if they pull out a neat trick like, oh, I cast polymorph, or I do this crazy thing, and now the creature is something else, or
the fight is over.
Yeah.
So I mean, we did talk about using weaker monsters as the way of prolonging that battle a little bit. Then the other thing, which will actually be a little more challenging, is incorporating hazards, whether they're actual hazards or whether they're traps or certain effects that can go off. It would almost be it would almost be like the lair effects or the legendary actions, but it's its own thing. So I think the most effective way to do that too is do it in a way where if the players take certain actions, they can stop these things from happening. And it might be a way to divert some of their resources, some of their attention, and especially if you can kind of play it up to be bigger than it really is, and get them being like, "Oh, we got to stop this thing so we can beat the guy," and then it just adds another dynamic layer to the encounter.
The group encounter, the actual Revenge of the Horde book here actually goes into detailed encounters or groupings for each of the humanoids in that book. So if you're actually interested in playing those kind of things for different party levels, that book actually goes right in and says, "Oh, use these," and it gives you options as opposed to just here's one option.
Well, yeah, so basically like there's ogres, hobgoblins, orcs, goblins, gnolls. There's a bunch of monsters in here, and each one does that breakdown. It's like, okay, for the challenge rating of the party, by the challenge rating of the party for their level, and yeah, so there's a bunch of different ones that you can kind of pick out and be like, okay, you don't have to think about it. Like, oh, my party's 10th level. This is built for a 10th level party. You can drop it right in your game.
And it's going to use a combination of things from the monster manual and from Revenge of the Horde. So it's pretty nice.
So, and then also, if you need NPCs to do kind of like a similar thing, you can go into the Skullduggery book and grab the same thing. And then Nord Games also has all these great decks with some of similar stuff as well. So, with that, guys, in the comments below, why don't you give us your best tips for building encounters? While you're at it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
While you're down there, check the description and go check out Nord Games.
So, until next time,
stay nerdy.